Welcome back to the Proof of Vision podcast. In today's episode, I had on Humayun, chairman of ASI, and also just an all-around vet in the AI space. So Humayun has an extensive background in AI, getting involved with DeepMind early on. Also founding Fetch.ai, which you might be familiar with. It went on to become one of the main leaders in the decentralized AI, in the AI agent space, actually. So now Fetch.ai is a founding member of Artificial Superintelligence Alliance, right? ASI Alliance for short, which is what we'll actually be focusing more on in this episode. So ASI Alliance, basically, it's an alliance formed by some of the biggest players in the decentralized AI space. So this includes Fetch.ai, SingularityNET, Ocean Protocol, and CUDOS. So the goal here is to research and help develop decentralized AGI and eventually artificial superintelligence, right? ASI. So these projects, they all operate with nuances in the decentralized AI realm. So they have their own unique offerings that contribute towards this larger mission, right? This larger goal. So from infrastructure to the coordination of AI agents and the agentic economy to even deepen and tokenizing data on chain. So ASI basically unites these decentralized leaders to advance different solutions and push the boundaries within the AI space. So trying to steer more of the market share in the AI space to decentralized counterparts, right? So trying to take market share away from like OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, the rest of these guys that everyone listening is probably, pretty familiar with. So recently, back in Q1, ASI, they put out their ASI 1 mini model, which is actually it's the first Web3 native LLM. You can test it out for yourself, actually. We'll be touching on that in this episode. And we'll also touch on the approach that ASI takes when it comes to research and development, R&D, and serving as the largest decentralized, like open source entity in this space, what that means, what can be taken from centralized versus more decentralized approaches in AI. And ASI actually puts an emphasis on the commercialization and the monetization of AI, which is classically one of the things that some of these larger centralized entities took a little longer to focus on. We'll also touch on separating like building for users versus developers, and we'll get into that. So there were some technical difficulties in the beginning, which is why it might seem like this episode starts very abruptly. Regardless, this was a great episode. And we got into some of the nuances of traditional AI research, what the pathways to actually commercializing AI look like, ASI's offerings and roadmap, and a lot more. Have a listen. It's a good one. And can you give a high-level overview of ASI real quick? So we just talked about obviously the centralized side of AI. That's what most people are familiar with. But now we have a lot of momentum on the decentralized side of things as well. So can you give us just a few minutes overview on what ASI is and how it came to be?
So ASI's Artificial Superintelligence Alliance, it came out of the fact Fetch.ai, which was founded and run by me, and then we have Singularity, which is Ben Goetzel, who is the CEO, and then we have Ocean, where Bruce and Trent run it. All in a kind of similar time we came about, and different aspects of AI we were dealing with. Fetch was dealing with the agentic stuff. Singularity deals with more research, kind of algorithmic research and finding better models. And then Ocean was looking at more the data side of things, data privacy, and bringing kind of data in a decentralized manner without losing the privacy and security. So it became quite apparent that if we're going to do something not so disparate and a lot more in kind of a similar way that these bigger corporations, centralized entities do it, we need to kind of join and make an alliance where we join hands and we build a solution which is meaningful, not just saying this is a crypto project, but more having a more meaningful integration where we can actually build a proper solution. We then added to that a compute platform called CUDOS, and then so that became the fourth member of the alliance. So now we have four different layers which are covered by different projects. So we have CUDOS, which provides compute. We have we have Ocean, which provides the data tools. We have Singularity, which is researching all the algorithms and building solutions around the algorithms itself. And then we have the application layer, which is Fetch, which is building applications based on agents, bringing multiple different models together to actually deliver the final execution platform. So that now is the ASI, which is the FET token.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah. So as you mentioned, you have CUDOS, Ocean Protocol, SingularityNET, and Fetch. So before we go more into ASI, why don't we explore a little bit about Fetch in particular? Do you want to give a brief overview for all of our listeners into if Fetch specifically, and how it kind of plays into the broader vision of ASI?
Yeah. So Fetch is, as I said, focused on applications. What do we need for applications? What we need for applications is the ability for developers, for entrepreneurs, devpreneurs to actually build a solution which can be comprehensive, which actually delivers a utility, and actually gives you the ability to monetize it. So those are the main components. So Fetch looks at that whole kind of layer. How can we bring the users? So now in this new AI kind of first world, what do we need? So the first thing we need is a user interface, an interaction portal. So what could that look like is you could be speaking to Siri. You need a meta agent. You need somebody you can actually communicate with, because if you look at what's happening with UI is changing. UI is becoming more textual, it's becoming more interactive in the sense, and it's very dynamic. So you don't write the code for this user interface. It generates itself when you speak to it. So the first thing is, how do we take that meta agent, which is the LLM itself, and how do you take the user's input? So for that kind of interface, we have recently launched ASI 1, which is our own first decentralized Web3 based model, which is now our front interface to enter into this world of decentralized AI. So you can actually, I mean, you mentioned something like a Ghibli. We actually just recently seen some people do some comparisons, and you'll see them on X. But again, it has that kind of OpenAI, Mistral, kind of Gemini type of interaction. You can actually go in, you could do anything and everything. All of those LLMs can do. This would kind of very much do the same, and perhaps more, which I can take you through. So there's the user interface. So Fetch launched that ASI 1. That is obviously we're constantly improving it. But what the question is, why do we need that? Which is, we already have many others. Well, one thing is you can connect your wallet. The cost comparison is like really, really low cost. So we're bringing decentralized compute, and it's running on it. So you have this CUDOS compute and Fetch compute, which is deployed in a decentralized manner, which we're running this model on, the training of it as well. And then from there on, you go to say, okay, now I have the way to input something. How do I build a whole solution behind it? So that's where the agentic framework comes in. So now you have a meta agent. Meta agent takes your intent, it takes your request. Then what it has to do is then it has to go and convert that request into different subtasks. These subtasks are then executed by agents. Now, this is where we are starting to kind of be different. So what happens in other LLMs, you've seen like ChatGPT, Mistral, any of those, Gemini, Llama, you see these tool calling kind of things whereby these are dumb tools that you have to call and the LLM makes the decision. The way we work is there is this mixture. So you must have heard of mixture of experts. So to make LLM more efficient, you kind of componentize your task and you send it to different experts within the LLM. So extending that same principle, we have mixture of agents and mixture of models. So for example, if you have a financial request, it actually, the initial LLM decides to send it to this model, which is more efficient in, let's say, financial information. Then from there, you can actually go and search for agents which can carry out these financial executions. So, and then from there, you can actually run the whole task. Now, there is no other platform right now which can do all of this and actually go all the way down to running it on decentralized compute. So that's the whole application layer. We have developers building, and you can actually host the agents. You can try out the LLMs. You can actually build integrations. You can connect it to APIs. You can connect it to reinforcement learning. So you're actually kind of learning as you are executing the task. So this is highly tuned for that purpose, and that's what Fetch's tech stack looks like.
That's great. That's great. So yeah, you brought it up, ASI1 Mini, and yeah, I definitely planned on asking you about that. It's just such an interesting premise, right? A Web3 native LLM. Can you expand a little bit on that, like around what went into that, the development process, and like what you were looking to achieve with that initiative?
Yeah. So the core is that the training and the inference serving is served using decentralized compute, right? And to prove that decentralized compute can actually compete with centralized compute. So this is, of course, I mean, I'm a believer in progressive decentralization. So you can't just go all in when you don't have the resource to do it properly. So we started initially, we trained the model, started using decentralized compute. We kind of ran into kind of not having enough capacity in decentralized compute, and then we kind of got a little bit more centralized compute while we filled in with more decentralization, and then we kind of brought it back. So we trained the model in a decentralized compute fashion, but we did use some centralized compute because we had to, because otherwise there was just no option. There's not enough compute available. So, but I think that's changing. We are bringing, as ASI, we're bringing more and more compute to the decentralized space, and that's kind of moving along. So by training, it took us roughly 6 to 8 months to get to where we are. Then we started seeing some results, and we released it recently. And again, this is in its mini state. So we have a lot more features which are due to come, which are coming as we speak. We're releasing them all the time. With this whole ASI1, what we found was the results are very comparable at some, and we tuned it more towards agentic kind of systems, because it's slightly different because it's more execution based, not just conversational. So it's less conversational, so you'll find it more direct. You'll find it when the reasoning happens. I mean, just to give you an example, if you type in DeepSeek, how many hours, the usual hours in Strawberry, you'll see the reasoning, which will carry on for God knows how long. It keeps getting lost itself and reasons quite hard. And if you look at ASI1 Mini, it will reason very quickly and it will get you the result very quickly. So the results are both equal. I mean, they both choose the right hours, number of hours in the Strawberries, but we did it in less than quarter of the time of DeepSeek. So the reasoning is much faster. Because if you think about action, it doesn't have to be always faster, because some complex tasks can take a while for you. For example, if you're going to go and book a hotel and a car and a taxi and all of those things, you might sometimes need that extra time. But what I'm trying to say is that the reasoning is much faster, and it's still accurate. So that's quite a unique feature. There are other features which are coming, which is you actually can go and call agents directly. You don't need to have these MCP servers. You don't need to have, so you completely get rid of all of that intermediary stuff. But what is also quite interesting is when people are building these agents. So, if you think about where I see this going, we used to have websites. Now we're going to have agents, right? So every website is like a representation of either a business or a person or a LinkedIn account or whatever that is. They will all be represented by agents. How, when you have millions and billions of agents, how do you actually discover them? How do you actually find them? How do you actually go to the right one if you don't know which the right one is? So what Fetch is doing is building this agentverse, which is like the nexus of where you can register your agent and then you suddenly become discoverable within the LLM. So that's quite a core feature of how we're looking at ASI 1 Mini, and obviously all the extensions which are coming in very soon, and how you actually get to the agents. At the moment, you'll see all the solutions are very linear. They actually integrate. You have to hard code integrations, and then you say, do this, and you'll have to go to a specific either application or an agent to ask it to do something. What we're doing is a very dynamic approach where the LLM chooses multiple agents, then puts them together, and then executes the whole thing. So you can do multiple verticals, and you can actually connect them. But to do that, you need to know where to find these agents, which are from different verticals. So you have a search and discovery mechanism. So that's a very unique kind of feature that we have within this ASI 1 plus all the agentic framework. There is no other project which is kind of building any of this, Web 2, Web 3, whatever.
Yeah, I was just about to ask actually, because something like an agent aggregator, like a way for people to interface with this stuff, like in a way that can actually speak to them and it is intuitive. Yeah, it's just such a large problem. So yeah, you mentioned like you guys are the only team working on this. So where do you draw inspiration from? Like, how do you take a look at the playing field and analyze like what's going on, like, and how do you react to it? Yeah, as like a, you could say like a trailblazer or whatever. So how do you get the inspiration to incorporate into your development process?
Yeah, so it's look, I mean, we've been in this space for a while, and we kind of if even from DeepMind days, it was very clear how we need to commercialize this, and it won't be easy to commercialize these things, but agents seem like the right way to commercialize AI effectively, because then it can actually become more dynamic, it can be more cognitive, it can have the learning abilities, it can do all of those things, but to actually do it is as long as your path is clear, because the path is, hey, we're going to have this new wave of AI coming. We're going to do it using agents. It's becoming very clear that that's the case, because as you can see in the market, everybody's talking about, agentic workflows, agentic this, agentic that. It's easy to do it in a centralized entity. So if you have multiple departments and you have multiple functions, you can assign it to an agent, you can hard code it, and you know where to go and where to pass. But as soon as you come out of that protected, centralized environment, it becomes a lot more difficult. So, I mean, we have a clear path. We know exactly where we want to be, and we know where we are going. And I think we've proven it many, many times that this is, we are kind of aware of where we need to be. The question is actually the more difficult question, which for me is very inspirational, is can we find the right utility? Can we find the right applications which people can then start using? And actually we can start building. We're now coming to that stage. So all these complex parts of, can the agents communicate with each other? What protocol do they need to communicate with each other? How do they interact? How do they search? That all mostly in principle, the problems we've already solved. we've actually solved, and they're actually working in a deployment right now. So it's not that we don't know what we're building. It's we're already kind of building it. We just now need to make improvements, and we now need to make sure that the developers understand that's where we're going. So I think that's more an interesting task that we have to really tackle, is how do you show people the use cases, the solutions? And that's what we kind of get our inspiration from.
Right. So you mentioned, I think, an important point about the developers. So how do you differentiate between users and developers, like showing them what's possible? And yeah, like when it comes to adoption, because sometimes the vision for what an end user wants and what a developer wants can be very different. So how do you approach that sort of problem?
That's really, really interesting question you asked, and that's a very, very relevant question as well. So what is quite interesting is exactly that point, that you're building a new technology and the developers are very developer focused. So they just look at, how we want to make this thing better. They forget about the consumer, how the consumer is going to interact. So what we've done in Fetch is we have built two very separate teams. So one team, it's called Flock X. So it's like built a flock of agents and all that. What they do is they focus solely on user interface. So I'm a user, I have nothing to do with technology. How am I going to take an agent? How I'm going to deploy it? What am I going to do with it? How is it going to interact is not my problem. How I interact with it is my problem. So they focus solely on the consumer, which brings the use case, and the developers are solely focused on developing the best technology that you can have to actually fulfill those requirements. So we completely split it, and we kind of use it as a supplier-customer relationship. So the supplier is supplying the technology, and the customer is using the technology and giving feedback to each other. So and it's quite interesting because you have to do it in a new field, because it's quite difficult otherwise to even imagine for a developer to do what. So the developer group that we have in Fetch is building also for developer tools for other people to come and develop, because they understand that. And the Flocks group is building applications for different verticals. So you bring more and more use cases and see which ones actually fit the model, and how do they fit it, and how we can make it flow. So that's how we deal with it. And it's quite as I say, it's a very relevant question. It's quite a difficult one because most developers don't kind of understand the use cases.
Yeah, it's great to touch on that. So then I also wanted to ask about, you mentioned some interesting things, like keeping your eyes like on the ball, considering how to actually commercialize this stuff, not just building stuff, but actually figuring out how to monetize, separating developers and users. So it seems like you guys have a pretty thought out structure when it comes to development. So what are some pros and cons when it comes to analyzing the workflow from these bigger centralized AI companies? What do you like about them? What do you not like about them? Can you dive into that a little bit when it comes to how you guys compare and contrast?
The main issue I'm having at the moment in the decentralized space, I mean, parking the centralized entities, and I'll come back to that, is the ability for the decentralized space to understand what's actually going on. When I say decentralized space, a lot of this relates to crypto as well, right? Our fundraising model, the way we actually get valuations is through a crypto space, right? And what is quite interesting in crypto is that in crypto, it's more about meme coins and instant gratification and getting rich quick and all of those things, right? But what they don't see is the value that is being created. So if I said to you, here is a company which is producing similar results to OpenAI, Mistral, Llama, or Meta's AI, or Gemini, and it's very, very comparable. And I mean, is OpenAI, didn't they just raise 30 billion at some crazy valuation or something? Right. So if you think of that, and you think that in Web3 space there is this company called Fetch.ai, which has actually just launched the LLM, which is kind of beating some of these bigger companies at their own game, plus has all this agentic system around it and has 30,000 developers building on it. How would you value it, right? What's the valuation of such a company? I mean, it should be comparable to the centralized entities, but the problem we see in decentralized space is that it's not, because it's not doing 100,000x, it can't be that good, right? So, but what people need to kind of evaluate is, rather than having this meme coin mentality, we need to start becoming a little bit more mature in our understanding of why this space is so good, is that you're getting the opportunity to be part of a company which is very comparative to this centralized entity, but you're becoming part of it in a decentralized space. And there is huge amounts of value that could be extracted here. Not just financially, but more in terms of the interaction with the technology itself. And I find that quite annoying, yet quite fascinating why that is the case. I mean, you would think if crypto is that financially motivated, one would see how these values kind of relate. I mean, I'll give you an example. The whole alliance is valued at like 1.5 billion, and we have any of these LLM companies, none of them are valued less than like 60, 70 billion. So that's quite disheartening in a way. And then obviously what doesn't enable us to do is to actually unlock that funding, the value that we are creating. So I think that's something, that's something annoying, but we carry on, because what that teaches us is, even with very kind of tight budgets, we can deliver huge value. And I'm sure as we mature in this industry, we will see that value come through.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, definitely in crypto, like sometimes things are vastly overvalued, and then sometimes vastly undervalued as well. Yes, part of what makes those opportunities available, right? So, yeah, you mentioned because you guys took the more decentralized route. Yeah, you're obviously not able to procure as much funding as some of these like massive centralized entities, right? So, like, one of the big themes that got mainstream attention was obviously like DeepSeek, and people were like, oh, they're running like a very lean kind of operation. They've exclusively hired like people who worked in China, like not even like US engineers. So what do you think about that? Like, is there any possible parallels? Like, do you guys kind of think you're like, oh, maybe we're sort of in the same boat, maybe not? Like, what do you guys think about that? Because I think it could be potentially like a very strong narrative, right? Like DeepSeek was a very mainstream topic. So when you have these, but whether it's just a small team or it's like a decentralized entity, I think people do actually want to see like these underdog type stories in the AI space.
And I think, I mean, you think DeepSeek didn't have money? I mean, they should speak to us. we did it at probably 1/10 of their budget, because don't forget, they still had in the background quite a lot of money. It was from a hedge fund funding. So it's not true when they say, oh, well, we just trained this in $5 million. No, that is not true. They might have fine-tuned it in $5 million, and but that wasn't the case. And that is, although that's like that's a red herring, but obviously it's still at a fraction of the cost of the US companies. Now we have teams in US, and we have teams in India, and we have teams in UK, but we have very small teams, and we've done the same thing with a lot less people. And I think that's where is quite interesting. That the value, actually, what we have created is vastly higher than any of. I mean, if you look at the ratios of the money spent to the value creation, it's vastly different, and the ratio is completely, out of kilter in comparison to even DeepSeek. So, but having said that, the valuation is what the valuation crypto gives us, which is unfortunate, but that's where we are.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard for a lot of these principles to reflect in crypto. Like, yeah, maybe in stocks, these kind of things are analyzed deeply, and a lot of time spent combing through these companies and figuring out like their productivity on a per person basis and all this. So I think in this next segment, I want to move back to ASI specifically. I know there's a lot like going on under the hood, there's a lot in the works. So why don't you just outline a bit of like what's on the roadmap, right? We're in Q2 now. So what can our listeners expect from ASI in Q2 and in the year ahead as well?
Yeah, so our focus is, I mean, we talked a lot about Fetch. Fetch is not fully possible, as I said, without the compute that's underneath, and adding more and more compute to that. And we have this decentralized compute platform within ASI, where CUDOS is adding more compute, and probably I would say in the last quarter they've trebled the compute that we had. So we're seeing a lot of traction there, not just for our own purposes, but also we're helping other companies, other enterprises to come and use decentralized compute. So you're going to see a lot of that coming through, and we're going to see a lot of compute being commissioned to be decentralized. So that's one thing. We've seen certain different types of agents and some certain different types of data coming into for training these specialist models that Fetch has been building. So we've been deploying some of these specialist models, which we're now launching another initiative called ASI Train. Again, these are monetization strategies, because if you look at up till now, people have been building these machine learning models, but not with any success of actual monetization. We're bringing is monetization tools for these model builders, the data scientists, because then they can build their one very specific model, and they can become discoverable to this huge number of agents, which will or may not require their model. If they require their model, they have a monetization strategy. They don't have to worry about it. They just build the model, train the model, put their agent on Agentverse, on Fetch, and then they get discovered. So to build those models, you need all the tools. You need the data tools, which is coming from Ocean. You need compute, which we are actually actively sponsoring quite a lot of these models to be built on the ASI compute platform. We then also have the ability to support them with different algorithms, and we have our own models, which Singularity brings online all the time, and they're working on those AI-based prediction models, and then we wrap that all up in a platform which is either Agentverse connected to ASI One, and we have ASI Create, where you can actually create and deploy these solutions, knowledge graphs. I mean, we already have knowledge graph integrated into ASI One Mini. I don't know if you've tried it, but I would highly recommend it. You can actually create multiple knowledge graphs. You can actually instantly deploy them, and you can actually use them with your LLM. And that's a cool tool which actually the community really enjoys, because you can actually give it your personal preferences. You can give it a document. It can actually tweak the results based on your preferences. So that's quite interesting. We have the research agent, which is coming, which is going to do, you can just throw any topic at it and will research. We have one thing which I'm really quite excited about is this agentic collaboration tools. So what would happen is that 5 people, 10 people can have all have agents, and you can collaborate to do something. For example, if you want to go out for dinner, you want to make sure everybody's dates are matched, you don't have to worry constantly sending messages. Send out your agents and they work it out and book the restaurant. And you can also do collaborative discussions. So you can actually, and that's quite an interesting one. We haven't showcased it yet, but very soon we are looking to showcase it. You can actually do a research topic and you can actually build different entities to actually argue for, against, or neutral, or you can give it personality, and you can actually read the whole paper, and it's really, really cool, because this is like having researchers having a discussion. You can do all those kind of things, so you can actually, so based on that, you can actually achieve consensus to actually do tasks, which is, again, something we're looking to release within this next month or so. So all of these tools are coming, and they all need compute. So the compute is now going up, and the deployment of compute is, accelerating. We have a whole tech stack which starts right from model building or agent building and goes all the way down to compute. So you'll see a lot more developer-focused kind of releases on one side and consumer-focused use cases on the other.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, a lot to look forward to. So I think this has been a very good recording. I think definitely very insightful for people to get more of like a high level overview of the AI space. So I'm gonna ask one more question. In the crypto AI space specifically, like over the past few months or towards the end of 2024, you had like the agents craze, right? That's kind of fizzled out a little bit. Or it's fizzled out a lot actually, but yeah, AI is still like the dominant narrative in crypto. Like it's not even close. So I think right now there could be a lot more room for, I hate to say, like more serious projects like ASI, Fetch, etc. But that's a little bit what it seems like. So what are your thoughts on like the crypto AI space, the agentic AI space, that whole movement, and what you guys are building, like how that fits into it?
Yeah. Well, you said it, a little bit more serious, right? So we're building something which is actually not just a meme coin. We're not building a meme coin agent. The agent craze that came was not really an agent craze. That was just a meme coin craze. And it still is, because all people did was, hey, I've written 5 lines of code, and now I have an agent which does X. That's not an agent. That's not an agentic system. That's just bare minimum. And you could write just a script to do any of this. You can automate people posting using somebody else's LLM, right? I mean, if you think using OpenAI as an LLM to post something on Twitter, how difficult is it? And then yet people went crazy after that, which, yeah, I mean, what can I say? I mean, it is what it is, right? This is meme coin mentality. So yes, it has kind of fizzled out, but I'm so glad it did, because it was not right. It was not really technology. It was very much a meme coin get rich quick scheme. What I feel has not even come yet properly is the true utility and application of agentic systems. We know AI is going to be very important, but AI without agents is not going to be deploying solutions. You can't build applications with AI unless you are looking at an agentic solution. So they are tied very closely together, and building machine learning and AI models in one big corporate can help you make predictions on utilization. It can make predictions on energy consumption. I mean, it can do all sorts of things, but to really make a difference using AI with the consumer, with very complex tasks, you need this agentic systems. And I don't even feel we've started yet. I think there is another phase which is coming, which hopefully will be a lot more serious and more understanding of the complexity of this whole thing, and people will then get behind what is true AI agents, and that's hopefully is still to come.
Right. All right. That was excellent. Yeah, I definitely think the listeners will get a lot out of this. Do you have any last words, parting thoughts that you want our listeners to know?
Yeah, I think, well, we say this on every crypto cycle, that let's focus on the right projects which keep building, have been delivering. I would say the same. It would be good for people to check us out and see what we have built, see the achievements. And I still feel that crypto and AI together has a great future once we stop messing about with, your rug pulls and, pump and dumps and meme coins. So I do feel that the space needs to mature, and my recommendation would be to look at serious projects. I'm not saying we're the only ones, but there are several others. But it would be good for the communities to actually focus on building and deploying solutions rather than just trying to be overly get rich quick attitude.
All right. Yeah. I mean, there's several projects in the decentralized AI agent coordination space. So yeah, I think we'll leave our listeners with that. I want to thank you for your time, Humayun. Thank you very much. And yeah, thank you guys
Daniel.
for listening. All right.
Thank
have
you,
a good
everyone.
one.
Thank you.